Welcome to Podnutz Computer Repair Podcast, episode number 181. I'm your host, Jeff Halash. This is our live call-in show for computer repair techs. We answer your questions on running and operating your computer repair business. The call-in number is 1-888-697-0162. Let me introduce the co-hosts. We have Marvin Bee from MB Systems. How you doing, Marvin?
I am doing great, especially since it's 86 and fair down here in South Florida, which means a couple of clouds, but I don't know what this snow you speak of today.
Yes, for everybody that doesn't know, we had a little snow today. I saw it come down, hit my windshield. It melted right away, and it was like 45 degrees outside. So anyways, and it's May. Anyways, joining us also we have Paco Lebron from Prodigy Techs. How you doing, Paco?
Better than good, better than most.
All right, awesome to hear. And we also have joining us today a newcomer, Jason from Phoenix PC Repair. Jason was on the last episode of Podnutz Daily, so check that out if you want to hear about his business and what he does. How you doing, Jason?
Pretty good. How about you?
Good. I am doing excellent. All right, let's take care of some business here. Mark your calendars. Toronto on Convention, July 22nd through the 24th, 2016. Some of the things we're going to be talking about, and it's very important that if you are going, or if you're planning on going, get your tickets now, because there's only 100 available. We want to pack the facility out, and I think we're going to have a lot of good information for a lot of people. Here's some of the things that we're covering. If I knew then, basically, if I knew then what I would do now. Lessons learned from your experienced colleagues. Everything you need to know about selling your business services. Everybody wants to know how to sell what we do. We're going to have some work groups where you are going to be able to participate. Mastering time management, marketing that actually works, and pricing strategies. How many people always ask questions? How much do you charge? How much do you charge? How much can I charge for this service? What's the best way to go about this? So these are some of the things that we're going to all collaborate on and bring some ideas together that you can actually take home with you and use in your own business. All right, some of the Sunday labs that we're going to have, the Essential Network Toolkit put on by Marvin Bee, and also Improving Your Web Presence by Matthew Rodella. So again, two essential things. Everybody wants to know, hey, how do we maintain these networks? What types of tools can we actually use that's going to make our life a lot easier than the way we're used to doing it? And also improving your web presence. Let's just be honest, guys. I've seen a lot of websites out there, and yeah, they're not real great. So there's a couple services out there that can help you with that. But also, if you want to know what you need to do and you want to take the time to do it with your own web presence, he's going to explain some of the things that need to be done. So very important there. Breakfast, lunch, and snacks will be provided. And what I'm encouraging everyone is, even if you're on the fence, I'm going to ask that the tickets are a couple $100s. Plus you got to get there. Plus you got to pay for a hotel room. Hey, room with somebody, save a little bit of money that way. Share a meal, whatever. But I'm going to ask that you invest in yourself and your business. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, then I would ask that you would just go and think about investing into yourself. This is all tax write-off, and I think it's going to be well worth your while to show up and get a lot of good information. You're going to be able to rub shoulders with Marvin, Paco, and of course me, and that in itself is worth $200 just to rub shoulders with me.
Well, I was thinking more me, but I mean, you know.
Okay, each to their own, no, anyways, really, seriously, think about it and definitely sign up. Get your tickets now before they are sold out. Again, it is July 22nd through the 24th. It's on a weekend. It's not going to take away from your business, and it's going to be a great time. With that being said, Marvin, do you have anything to add about the Toronto On Convention?
I think it's going to be a fantastic event where, we're not going to have all of the, conference interference with all the other stuff that goes on. It's going to be a perfect time for us to just simply be with each other and focus on what helps us make our business run. So,
awesome. I'll definitely appreciate that. All right, so definitely go. We'll have a link in the show notes as usual, and you can go sign up there. And again, if you use my link through the show notes there, just know that I do get a small commission off of that. kind of helps pay for some things that we're doing. All right, so let's go into Paco. Let's start off with you, since you've been showing up the last, every other week or something like that, kind of hanging out with us when you're available. Because obviously you do that other show,
Right.
that other show.
Right.
But anyways, why don't you share a tip or a story with us that we could learn from?
Yeah. For anyone who is doing any type of pay-per-click advertising, whether it be Google AdWords or Bing ads, more for Bing ads, make sure you have a privacy policy on your website, because they are now limiting ads or the campaigns altogether if the URL you're directing your ad to does not have a visible privacy policy link. If essentially they want to make sure that you're not, scamming people, or they want to know you're not, stealing people's information and trying to sell it off. So essentially having something like that on the website proves that obviously you're a legitimate business and you can continue to use their platform.
Now, is that going to be throughout the website that you have to have a privacy policy, or is that on the homepage?
Essentially, as long as you have it in the footer of your website, which most websites do, they usually have a privacy policy hyperlink and a terms and conditions hyperlink that will lead to that page. That's usually all that's needed.
Okay, so as long as you have those hyperlinks at the bottom, which actually, now that I think about it, I was thinking about my website. I don't, but that's actually probably a good place to put that.
Yeah, I was thinking about doing it for a while now, especially the terms and conditions, because I tend to update a lot of things, and I never really get the chance fast enough to update the work orders. So, and I have the physical work orders that I get from the computer business tech kit from over at TechNibble, and by updating those terms and conditions, I have to reprint those work orders, and sometimes I don't get to it fast enough like I'd like to. So essentially, on those work orders, you put on there with an asterisk saying, hey, terms and conditions are subject to change. Most up-to-date terms and conditions will always be on the website, and the user can always click.
Yeah, see, the problem with I've never put the terms and conditions in a hyperlink on my website, because I've always had it so that I can take my customer there if I'm doing a remote session, and they can basically, I'll take them to that page on their computer, and they can fill it out from there. But I don't want just everybody going looking at the terms and conditions. I know some people do that, and to be honest with you, I don't really know why I don't.
Yeah, it's for preference. I mean, there's different ways of presenting it to the customer, but essentially, in the event you ever get to a point where you made a mistake or you had something that was on the terms and conditions electronically but not on the work order, because it's visibly on the website and you have that disclaimer, you have a better footing when you're trying to protect yourself.
And what do they exactly want in the privacy policy? Do you know?
Essentially, just the run-of-the-mill. Make sure you have about information being stored. If you're taking credit card information over the website, you're keeping that safe. Essentially, that if you're tracking, like if you're using Google Analytics or something like that on your website, that you're not that you are monitoring these things, and if you're tracking cookies, to make sure you let them know you're tracking cookies and things like that. There's a lot of services out there. I actually talk about it in our upcoming episode on the other show, and we actually
you can give the name out.
So we'll give it at the end of when they make it to the end of the show. And there's a tool that a website that we suggest on being able to more of a template generator, and it allows them to have all that ready to go without having to write it all out, and it's illegal.
Okay.
Stuff legally on that part. By doing it through.
I'll be looking forward to that episode, because I do listen to everyone. I jest.
I agree. I understand.
All right, very cool. All right, Jason, what tip or story do you have for us that we could learn from?
Let's see. I have a good tip. It's mostly about a tech tip. For anyone who's looking for a good multi-boot tool, Easy to Boot is a very great tool. Not trying to hate on the other tools, but it's basically, it can boot directly from a Linux ISO, Windows ISO, XP 7 all the way up to 10. You can set up an auto on the 10 file, automate your install. Basically, it just works. So you just download the batch file from this website, run it, create the USB drive, copy all your payloads over, defrag them, make sure they're not fragmented, and there you go.
Okay.
So.
Now, what do you use that tool for? Now, obviously, you can put all your ISOs onto either a drive or a USB stick.
Well, I mean, you can basically, it's like, a grub menu, and, you can set up a password. So, like, if you're on a client machine, you need to boot into, like, a Linux backup utility like Clonezilla, and then you want to switch over to, like, a Windows, install Windows or back up the data, then reinstall Windows. You could just boot in Clonezilla, run it directly from the drive, plug in external when it, follow the prompts or whatever, and then once you're done with that, you can do that, and then instead of like plugging one flash drive in and then taking that one out, you could just do it all from one drive. So it's mostly just like running payloads on a system.
Okay.
So
now you said grub. Now when you say grub, I think that's a Linux term that I'm not real familiar with. But when I think of grub, I think of eating food. But what is grub? Just so people know.
Well, it's grub for DOS, which basically, as most people, Linux users out there, grub is the bootloader, like boot manager or NTLDR on a Windows system, so it's a Linux bootloader.
Gotcha. Okay.
But it's modified for DOS, so it works in both ways. So.
And now, the last time I used Easy to Boot, now this was a few years ago, to be honest with you, but I found it very easy to set up. The thing, and it was great for Linux ISOs. What I couldn't get to work, and maybe it was the particular ISOs I had because I had manipulated some of them, but I couldn't get some of the Windows ISOs to actually work. Now, you're not finding a problem with that anymore, right?
Well, now Steve has improved it with, for anyone who's familiar with IMDisk. IMDisk is a virtual CD driver, and basically what Steve has done is he made a batch script or an XML file that there's a bunch of things that go into it, but basically it calls IMDisk and actually installs it in the PE, and it will load up IMDisk, mount your Windows ISO, and then it'll look for the mounted drive letter, and then it'll mount it in the PE. So you don't get that, CD drive cannot be found.
Okay. Very cool.
Now, will you have to call the IMDisk first, or can you still call the ISO and it'll do it through the XML call?
Usually the script that I've looked at in talking to Steve, the IMDisk is initialized first, and since the IMDisk driver is loaded, and then the batch script is loaded, there's like several of them, and then it loads up the ISO, looks for like a specific name of what you choose, and then it says like Windows 7 Ultimate, blah blah blah, and then it looks for it, mounts it, finds the drive letter, and then it presents, and then auto starts the install. Or you can set that up, but if you want to.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right, Easy to Boot. Check it out, and that's at easytoboot.com. Is that correct?
Yep. I'll throw the link in the chat.
Awesome. Okay, and Mr. Marvin Bee, what tip or story do you have for us that we can learn from?
Well, I don't know how great a tip this is, but I will give you guys a little thing. I had to run out to a office earlier today because I noticed that we had lost connection in my RMM tool last night, and basically it was a server, and it's one of the multi-offices that I work at, so I remoted into one office and tried to ping across to the other side of the office, and I could see some devices and not. So I knew there was something going on. So I ended up going there and basically found out that I had a DNS issue. And one of the things that I did, besides using all the tools that I had to try to test connection and verify stuff, was on my router, you've got the 4 local LAN ports, at least for the ones that I use. I use the SonicWall. So you have your WAN port, and then you've got all your LAN ports. So one of the things that I like to recommend to people is to not just get the routers with a single WAN and a single LAN option,
Right.
just for this type of deal. And what I have done on a lot of my routers, not all, but I probably should, is I've configured the 4th LAN port as a separate network with a DHCP server on that network and DNS, so that I can simply plug in my tools and check if I've got proper DHCP, DNS, and internet connection. So, an issue that I think in the past when I had to troubleshoot a DNS issue inside an office, I didn't know it was a DNS issue at
Okay.
the times, so it would have been trying to figure out, is it the server, is it the router, is it the switches, because I've got 2 switches on there, plus there's 2 voice over IP PoE switches in there. There's all these things going on. There's 2 VLANs, so it would have been a nightmare to try to go through and figure out all that stuff. But it has nothing to do with the story in terms of what I had to do to go fix that client, but it was just a tip that I thought, it's a very easy thing to be lost in trying to figure out where the problem really is on the network. And besides the tools that I have to go in and test, do I have network connection? Do I have DHCP? On the router, it's very easy to set up that, unused LAN port that, most of the time they're going to sit unused. Just pre-program it so it's already ready to go. So all you have to do is walk in, plug in with a laptop or a network tester, and see if you get internet connection right away. Because the way I was testing on the regular network, if I went anywhere in that office and plugged in, I had no internet. So
Gotcha. Okay.
even though I knew the router was up, but I had no internet. So run to the router, do a test there. If it's already pre-configured, you don't have to do much. Just plug in and test.
That's a great tip. That really is. Yeah, I think that, and again, it goes back to the difference between a consumer router, I think a lot of times, and a commercial router. I think you need to definitely have something that's a little more up to speed that's going to give you those options that you can have more ports.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. That's a great tip. So you can plug right in and go, yep, internet's up. Now what is blocking it on the other ports?
Yep.
Very cool. All right. I don't know that I have a tip or a story this week. I'm working on a couple different projects. I've got to take a bunch of stuff off of a MacBook and a pictures and such, and get the documents and transfer those over to a regular Windows machine. So I'll be working on that this week. Other than that, it's actually been pretty quiet, which I don't really mind. I know for a lot of people they're like, oh man, I need more work, but no, I'm happy where I'm at. So I think we'll go ahead and move on from there. I think we got a couple emails, and then we'll get into our main topic. All right. This is from Josh McClure. It says, why I love nonprofits. 2 words, board members. The thing about nonprofit organizations is that most, if not all, have a board of directors. These boards usually include high-caliber, well-connected community members who are leaders in their own business or in the community. Doing work for some nonprofit organizations may not be the most lucrative venture because of their limited budgets, but the contacts you can make through the work can prove to be more valuable in the long run. Not long ago, I became the system administrator for a local nonprofit, and yes, I gave a slight discount on my rates, and I could be making more with a business who would pay my normal rate. As one of their board members one of the friends of the board member asked who did the IT work there, and the name was given. The board member turned out to be a clerk of the circuit court who called me to do some personal work for her. We met, and after I fixed her computer, she introduced me to some of the ways I could get involved in the community that I had never thought of before. Given that the person is an elected official, you know they will have a big circle of influence, and I am hopeful this chance encounter will lead to other valuable connections. Take care, Josh McClure. He's the owner of Your PC Magician. Thank you for the email, Josh. Definitely appreciate that. And I will second that. A lot of people will always ask this is a common question, how do I get into business? How do I get into businesses and actually become their IT support? And a lot of people really don't want to hear this. There's different rules of thumb. A lot of people say, hey, pound the pavement, and that works to a certain extent. Obviously, many different ways of advertising. But what it really comes down to, if you really look at most people's businesses, and if they go back and start from the beginning, you'll see that it is basically about who they knew. Now, you can control who you know by the groups that you become associated with, whether it be a BNI chapter, Chamber of Commerce, any of these nonprofits, different things like that. You're going to have people there. They're going to notice the work that you do if you do good work, and they're going to be able to send you out and recommend you to their friends who a lot of times own businesses. So I definitely say that's a great way to go. Paco?
I agree. Me personally, having done nonprofit work myself, just outside of the computer business, volunteering my time when I was younger, probably about 10 years ago or so. And then most recently, I've gone ahead and joined a nonprofit on their board as well. So, and I do agree with Josh specifically that you never know who you meet and who you run into. And lately, probably in the last 2 months or so, I've been following a lot of public figures and stuff, and a phrase that came up a lot was living is giving. And one of those where now I'm starting to slowly do that more and seeing how I can help versus thinking about the monetary side behind it. And what I've come to find out is the more that I do give, the more I tend to be getting back. And that's anywhere from making things available to low-income households that don't know how to get internet into their homes readily, versus the Microsoft Refurbisher program where you can actually purchase refurbished PCs outside of a big box store. So it's things like that that have really helped. And I do agree with him that you never know who you meet, especially whether you're working with a nonprofit or sitting on a board for a nonprofit, because they're asking for your expertise. There's plenty of other industries in that room, and oftentimes will ask for your opinion, if not work that you can help out with.
Right. Marvin, do you do any works with nonprofits?
I do.
That I have to say.
Oh, you want me? Yeah, I do work with not-for-profits. I usually try to limit the number that I work with because there's a lot down here, and
okay.
I used to work for a not-for-profit when I first got out of grad school, so I know a lot of people in those circles. But definitely, networking, properly, doesn't matter whether you're at, it's a BNI, chamber, not-for-profit, it's all the same. So you can network a nonprofit the same way you do any other organization. And a lot of those board members for the not-for-profit that I worked for are people that are still doing business with me today, even though I'm doing something completely different than what I was then.
Okay, great. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, I do work with a lot of nonprofits in my area, so of course, like Paco said, I get them a discounted rate, but I do limit who I work with from time to time, depending on my schedule. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep. Very good. Yeah, that's how you got to get out of your basement or your office or whatever, wherever you dwell, and get out and actually rub shoulders with people. It's part of doing business.
Yep.
All right. Second email. What was that?
Good networking.
Yep. Second email is from Heath Landreth. Said on episode 179, you mentioned the time it takes to update Windows 7. According to Steve Gibson in a recent episode of the Security Now podcast, episode number 557, he recommends downloading the update to Windows Update client first because the old one has problems taking the newer Windows Update servers. And I'll have a link in the show notes for that. And I think we talked about that a little bit on last week's show, is that, there's an updater for the update for Windows 7 that you can download, and it will make things go a little quicker. At Swift on Security recommends the following. If updating fresh Win 7, first download these, install and reboot to make the update install faster. And it's KB310 2810, KB313 8612, and KB314 5739. And I will put those in the show notes. I have not tried that, so I'd be interested to know if that actually helps. But the next time I do a Windows 7 install, I will definitely give this a shot. It says on the same episode, a question was raised regarding temperature monitoring in a server closet or room. In our server rooms, we have been using Lacrosse wireless temperature sensors. I like wireless. They will email us if the temperature gets too high or too low. I believe it may also send texts as well. And he sent a link for that, so I'll have the link for that in the show notes for anybody that needs to get some temperature monitoring for their server rooms. I enjoy your show, and keep up the good work, Heath. Thank you, Heath. Appreciate that, and great information there. All right. All right, I think we're going to go ahead and move into our main topic. Now, there's a lot of people out there, and I'll put this out front. What we talk about on this show is very opinion-based, but I also do not agree with what a lot of people will call the industry standard. Oh, I just threw up in my mouth. Or anything of those sorts, because here's the reality. Since the beginning of time, there's been many different ways to do business. So I agree with exploring different ways that are going to work for you, because the way somebody does business one way, if you try to follow that cookie cutter, you might be successful, okay? But you also might be successful and miserable at the same time, because maybe it's not the type of work that you like to do, or it's not the types of things that you like to do. So therefore, there are many different ways to skin a cat. All right? Animal lovers, don't get on me about that. So anyways, my point is, one of the things I want to talk about today is one of the things I've been hearing in a lot of forums and groups is there will be people that will offer their customers whatever rate they offer them, an hourly rate, and they will not mark up their hardware that they sell to that customer. And a lot of people go, oh my gosh, what do you mean? No, you should be doing at least a 30% markup. No, you should be doing a 40% markup. No, you should be doing a 50% markup. Really? Okay. Let me explain something to you. There's this thing called a mortgage. I don't know. A lot of us have them. You know, you want to buy a house, you get this thing called a mortgage, okay? And it basically signs your life away for 30 years until your house is paid for. And most of the time, people don't last that long and they move on to something else. But in a mortgage, when you go to get a mortgage, there are different ways that mortgage broker, the one who's providing you the mortgage through the bank, okay, is going to get paid. Sometimes they can get paid on the front end. Sometimes they can get paid on the back end, okay? Sometimes you pay a little bit up front to save a little bit in interest. If you ever really sit and do the math, now, we're not talking about long-term interest and all that, but if you do the math, you're pretty much, as a consumer, you're pretty much going to be paying the same one way or another. And that mortgage broker is going to be making the same one way or another. Now, I know this is, again, not cookie cutter, and it's not exactly like this, but my point is there are different ways. If you have an hourly rate that's going to take care of your customer, they're willing to pay it, and you don't need to nickel and dime them on everything, then maybe you're not going to charge a markup, or you don't want to keep that in your record books, because sometimes it's a pain in the butt. And I'll give you an example. The reason I came up with my hourly rate of $80 is very simple, because I wanted stupid, simple math. So I could cut that. I charged by every 15 minutes. Obviously, we do an hour up front, and if we go past that, I'll do 15-minute increments. And really, it was just so the math was easier on my part. That's why I came up with that number. No other reason, to make my life easier. And quite honestly, if my life's easier, I'm happier. So that's what I did. Now, you can come up with many different ways. Now, it's not that I don't upcharge on hardware. I do, especially for residential. But I know a lot of businesses out there that make a lot of money. They're doing very well. They do not charge for their hardware. They do not upsell. They basically, whatever they buy it for, they might maybe round it off. So if something was $465, maybe it's $470 or whatever. And they'll do that, pass that along to the customer, because here's the bottom line. A lot of customers nowadays, they can go on Amazon, or they can go over here or over there, and they can find these products. And what we want to do is we want them to have a product that we can work on and that we know well. So in order to do that, sometimes you're going to have to say, you know what? I don't need to make the $3, $5, $10, $15, $20, $40 off of this item when I can actually put it into my hourly rate and make up the difference. And depending on how you run your business, maybe sometimes even come out in the long run better off than having to deal with all this nickel and dime stuff. So my point is, there are different ways to do business, and you can choose which way you want to do it. But I want to hear from the rest of the people on this panel of what their thoughts are on, do I do a 30% upcharge on the hardware that I sell my customers, and why or why not? So Paco, do you want to start off?
Sure.
Only because you're to my left.
Right.
Or my right.
Whichever you look at it.
I don't know yet. I've got it reversed. I don't know.
So we personally, we do what you mentioned. We just round up to make the number even. But
Okay.
we round it up to whatever the 9 is, because we've read on a couple articles where people seeing the 9 in the end of a number, they're looking at, like, for example, $19.99 or $19. In their head, it's in the $10 range, when in reality, it's $1 away from the 20.
Right.
So that's what we modified all our stuff to. And essentially, like you said, I mean, I don't have time to figure out what's the right percentage to upcharge equipment to make it worth my while. I mean, the only time we ever charge for hardware is when we're on site for residential. If we're on there, it's an hourly rate. We find out that the hard drive's bad. They want it fixed that day. We add $20 on top of whatever the cost of the charge is. And the only reason why we add $20 is because that's what we consider our trip charge. But essentially, we just say, hey, it's, I don't know, if it's a $50 hard drive, it's $69. And the reason why we do it that way is because, one, we're tax exempt, so we don't have to worry about the taxes. And then two, it's because we have to pause the time, go down there, come over, grab the item, come back, and unpause it. If they don't want to pay more, the $20 more, because they can find it on Amazon, hey, you're more than welcome to it. But you're going to have to pay me from where we stop the time now, and it rounds up to whatever, you know, depending where they are in the time frame, and then we have to schedule me to come back out again. That's why we do it that way. But we don't find, I mean, because the company I used to work for before, they used to have a chart that would say from this amount to this amount, it's 300% markup. If it's, you know, this amount, and then it kept going on to however bigger the amount is. I don't have time to be sitting there trying to calculate it. I'm in front of a customer. You know, it's all time being killed in far as from my experience. So we just take it easy, and we know that we're going to make more on service than we are with parts. That's just for us here, because there's a lot of savvy online shoppers that we have as customers.
Right. Very good. Good points. Marvin?
Well, I mark up, and I don't.
Of course you do. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, I do.
No, you do.
But here's the reason I mark up. I'll go way back to the beginning when I started the business.
Oh, that was, hey, did they actually have electricity back then?
Gather round, kids. Uncle Bob's going to tell you a story. In the early days of the IBM PC. Now, one of the things that actually got me started with inventory, because I did what a lot of people do. I would just get stuff when I needed it. I'd run down to whatever store. At the time I was doing it part-time, I worked at a computer store, so I got all my parts from that store. The owner was okay with us doing work after hours as long as we got our parts from him. And he did a nice, healthy markup.
Oh, I'm sure. Right.
So I realized that, you know what, I can get some stuff cheaper and make the markup myself. So I did that, and I would go over to whatever store. CompUSA was just starting up then, so that was a place to go. Or I'd go to a competing store sometimes. But when I went full-time on my own, one of the things that got me really going was I happened to have some extra stuff just sitting at my house, and I went to go hit on a law firm referral that I got. And I was there pitching my service, and I was trying to get them, you know, to pay me a monthly retainer. And I think it was like 4 attorneys and 5 secretaries, so it wasn't a big, huge account, but for me back then, that would have been a deal. And while I was there, one of the monitors went bad.
Oh.
And I just happened to say, well, I got a monitor at my shop. I can just go out and run, grab that, and come right back. I'll have you back up here in less than an hour. They're like, go do it. And a week later, when the secretary of the main attorney called me back, and she goes, well, we're going to go with you. And you want to know why? It's because you had the monitor and helped us out that same day.
Wow. Awesome.
So I just assume right there I'm always going to keep something on stock, so that I can always be that available to stuff. So I always knew I was going to basically keep inventory. But I also got into the business of making sure I got my stuff through a distributor where I could get discounted rates and make some money there. Now, I don't really calculate a percentage. I just figure out what would be the cost if they were to go buy it themselves. So if they were going to run down to the store and buy it, or if they were going to look online and buy it, what's that cost? That's the cost we're charging.
Okay.
And it works out. Sometimes I may make $1, I make $10, $100. That's what it is. So that's how I do my markup. But so for computer repair techs that are just starting out, you can't afford to get with distribution or whatever, you may have to come up with some formula yourselves of, if you have to run and go get it as a convenience for them, because like Paco said, the option is they can go get it themselves.
Right.
But they're going to spend their time to go do that. So since I was working with a lot of business customers, they understood they don't want to take the time to go do it. They pay for me to have the part available so that they wouldn't have to go online looking for it, drive to the store, pick it up, just to save, $2. And a lot of customers actually were like, look, I'll pay you extra just to take care of it for me.
Right.
So from the business perspective, they would pay that premium just so that they didn't have to worry about it. And they didn't have to worry about another invoice, another receipt to keep track of. I would just invoice them everything on my invoice, done, taken care of. So that's kind of the way I did that. So, but I will say this. I know that one of the big arguments is going to be that it is so much harder to make margin these days than it ever has been. Because even through distribution, even through wholesale, people can go online and find it on Amazon cheaper.
Right.
That seems to be more the rule, nowadays.
The only thing that I can say against that is, if you buy your product through me, you know that you're going to get a legitimate product, because some of the times, if you buy something off Amazon, it might not be legit.
True.
And
that is a good point.
And that's the only argument that I really have against Amazon. Because otherwise, I'll say, look, if you're just shopping for price, then go.
Right.
But if you're going to want me to take care of it, and you're going to call me if something goes wrong, then you either need to buy the part from me or from the vendors that I recommend. So if you're going to buy something from HP or Dell, you're not going to buy it off of Amazon or some internet web store that we don't know anything about. And that was the way I did it. I mean, I didn't really, put that much thought into it, but it was like, if I'm going to support it, then you need to buy it through me.
Yeah, I agree.
So
that makes life a lot. Yeah, because if you're going to buy from XYZ store, if something happens, you're doing the warranty work, you're taking care of all that stuff. Or you're going to pay me to do it.
Yeah.
One of the two. So.
Yeah, and then buying it through distribution or whatever, you're going to get help with warranty.
Right.
Sometimes it's easier for you to return something than for the customer. So I do that a lot of times. And with the right vendors and relationships, you get marketing assistance. So those companies will actually steer customers your way because you're a authorized reseller.
Okay. That's a good point. I didn't think about that. Okay. Very cool. All right, Jason, how about you?
Yeah, usually for like my business clients, I'll drive to the store if it's like, nearby, whatever. But of course, they understand, like from what Marvin said, it's, they understand the same day if a monitor breaks or, a keyboard breaks or whatever, I'll just put on my invoice and say, here you go. But for like a residential customer, like, friends, family, whatever, I jack it up a little bit, but not too much. I just round up. So, if it's 1200, it's rounded up to 1250. But depending on the rig and what they want and stuff like that. So, but for business clients, I just do it if they want it same day. They'll pay me extra for it, and then just take care of it. So.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, one of the things that now a lot of people know that, so there's a lot of people out there that will, like in my particular case, if I'm replacing a hard drive, you actually don't get a choice of hard drives. I know some computer shops they'll offer that. You can get this drive, you can get a blue drive, you can get a black drive, you can get a red drive, you can get this SSD, whatever. I don't do that. I basically, not in size-wise, other than if you had something that was huge, I buy 1 terabyte drives, because that's, in my opinion, best bang for the buck. And I buy on the 3.5-inch drives, I buy the Western Digital blacks. And on the laptop side, the 2.5-inch drives, I buy the Hitachi, which is basically the same thing as Western Digital black. 7,200 RPM. I don't mess around with 5,400 RPM. I think the 2.5-inch drives has a little bit less cache than the desktop version, but not that big of a deal. On a laptop, it still gives a lot better bang for the buck on that laptop, going from a 5,400 RPM to a 7,200 RPM with a larger cache. And I feel confident in these drives because they rarely, if at all, fail. I mean, all drives will fail at some point, but I've just had the best luck with these drives. So I can get these drives anywhere from $59 to $72 between Amazon, Newegg, or anywhere in between. And so I charge my customers $80. So sometimes I make a little bit more money, sometimes I don't make as much money, but it's not that big a deal. But I'm giving them a quality product to put into their computer that I feel good in warranting, and that I feel good that I'm probably not going to have to do anything with that drive. That computer is going to long die before I have a problem with the drive. So, and that's, quite honestly, this is a side note, that's one of the reasons I don't do SSDs yet, and there's a couple reasons. SSDs to me are basically the difference between analog and digital. SSDs are either on or off. And getting the data back is a little more troublesome than on a spinning drive. So for the people out there that are putting SSDs in, but you're not requiring your customer to get some sort of backup, cloud, local, everything in between, in my opinion, you're doing a disservice. Because you're setting them up for a failure that if they do lose their data, the chances are, unless they're going to spend thousands of dollars, they're probably never going to see that data again. So I'm a little wary of that. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's just a gut feeling I have.
One other thing to key off of that too is making sure you have trusted distributors, right? Because, perfect example, if you have a laptop that the motherboard goes out and you just go on eBay and find another refurbished board from some seller, you buy it, it fixes it, good to go. 5 months later, they come back, same issue happens again. So making sure you have a good distributor and you're not just buying from anybody is going to help you out, because this is the case where, hey, look, is there any type of warranty that's going on? You work out with these distributors before you purchase with them, making sure you develop a relationship so in case something like this does happen, you do make sure that you have yourself covered. And in the event that the client kind of says, hey, yes, I have no problem paying you for the labor, but for the part, what is the warranty? And that's kind of something you want to make sure you say up front too when you're repairing these type of things.
And the other thing with laptops, and I don't know if you've run into this, Paco, but part of the problem is on most of these parts, you're either going to get, sometimes you can get new boards, sometimes you're going to get refurbished boards, or sometimes you're going to get boards that are not new but basically pulled out of a working system.
Right.
And most of these boards in any of those categories are usually 30 days.
Right. Yep.
Maybe 45 days. So when it comes to a board, and I let people know right up front, full disclosure, you listen, you're going to get a 30-day warranty on here. Here's the labor it's going to cost when it comes to a motherboard, and here's what we need to do. I would recommend you going and buying a brand new laptop or desktop computer, because it just doesn't pay for itself. Now, a lot of times people just love their particular machine and they just want it fixed, so they'll pay for it.
Right.
I don't understand that, but
I had a client, same reason. She had a Samsung machine. It came in with a water damage on it. It turned out that it was not just the keyboard. It was the motherboard as well. And essentially it was just completely shot. So we told her, it's like, look, the amount of money it's going to cost to replace the motherboard and the labor, you can buy the exact same laptop refurbished, bigger hard drive for $100 more than what we would charge for the service. She didn't want to do it. She wanted us to fix the laptop. And it's just some people, it's just that way. And we explained to her, we can image the drive. It'll be exactly like how you had it before. It's in better condition than the one yours is in. Just didn't want to do it. And exactly like you say, being able to have, ensuring that you let them know what your warranty is for both labor and parts. Like for us, our warranty is 30 days, and we say it's for both. But depending on the client, depending on the situation, and depending on the type of part, there may be some exceptions. So for example, if it's a hard drive that failed, in this example, 6 months later, has a 3-year limited warranty, we may do the warranty claim for her, but she still has to pay the labor, but she won't have to pay for the new part. That sort of deal.
Yep.
So it just depends on the case-by-case scenario, but in that case, if it's within 30 days, like you said, when it comes to these type of things, and if you're using, and there's nothing wrong with doing this starting out, if you're using eBay, if you're using Amazon, if you're using these places to buy new boards, refurbished boards, etc., and they're reputable suppliers, by all means, but know what their warranty is on your end in case it does come back to you, because in essence you can't tell them, oh, it's my distributor's fault for giving you a faulty board. They went to you, you're the face, they're going to go to you.
That begs a question, Marvin. Now, as far as distributors go, because you've obviously dealt more with them than probably the rest of us, do they have things like motherboards that are readily available that you can get? Because part of the problem is with so many different forms of laptops, and not so much desktops, because desktops you can pretty much replace a motherboard with a socket size or whatever. But with the laptops, do distributors have access to that stuff, or are we still having to go to eBay? Because that's, to be honest, the best source I've found so far.
No, I wouldn't do any of those types of replacement warranties through the distributor. I actually would go through the vendor. So, for instance, or the manufacturer. So, HP, just to give you an example, my distributors would help me with, the first 30 days. If it's, DOA or something happens, yeah, I can return it to them and get a replacement. But anything that turns out to be, a board, card, hard drive, that's all through HP.
Okay.
So whichever distributor I get it from, I'm only going to get support the first 30 days for that. So, for instance, the standard HP warranty is usually 1 year. A lot of my business customers, we actually pay for the 3-year. And even though I can support a lot of that stuff, where the hard drive replacements, I usually take care of it, don't call HP. But if it's a board replacement, and we've had, for instance, we had a power supply go out, I'm in Fort Lauderdale, my customer's in Tampa, call HP, they're out there next business day, they've got the parts, they replace it, I don't have to worry about it. It's those weird situations where you're not dealing with the big manufacturers that becomes an issue. So that's one of the reasons I try to stay with my standardized list of items that I sell and support.
Gotcha. In doing mostly business anyways, they're going to have most. Now, do you ever get things outside of, like, somebody has a personal laptop that maybe works for a company that you do work for, that you might look at their computer, or do you kind of push it off on somebody else?
Well, depends on if their name's on the door or not.
Okay.
If their name's on the door or on the check, yeah, I'll look at it. If it's an employee, it really depends on the issue and the employee and the relationship. If they're one of my regular customers and I've got a monthly deal with them, I'm gonna at least try to look at it. But bottom line is, I really don't step outside of my realm if there's something, if it's a a manufacturer I don't deal with, if it's a Sony Vaio, for instance, a lot of times I do run into people that have a Sony Vaio problem.
Ugh.
If it's hard drive or memory, yeah, I can probably help them. If it's anything else, sorry, I don't even want to take the risk of
Right.
trying to help them. And I know people are going to say, hey, yeah, just go on eBay, get a cheap part, take care. I'm not going to do that because the one time that it doesn't work, I'm not going to have my name on that.
Right.
So,
yeah. From a business standpoint, I can definitely see that.
yeah.
Don't ever buy from eBay.
Don't ever buy from eBay anything?
Well, I mean, for like a residential, if it's like, I sometimes buy from eBay, like for small stuff, like a keyboard, but like motherboards, like other stuff, I usually go through like the vendor or my distributors, either way, regardless.
So so explain that to me. So how do you find the particular? Because I've looked at distributors and different companies out there, and I have not been able to find the particular motherboards I need for specific laptops. Do you turn those jobs down, or do you? I mean, because that's predominantly where I've gotten all my motherboards for years.
Yeah, I mean, if it's just something like small, like I'll look on eBay and say, okay, this is, if it's salvageable, and if it's a non-business client and it's okay with them, then I'll do it. If it's not, and it's same day, then we'll just say if the like business laptop is fried, then I'll just clone it, image it, and they'll say, same day, get a laptop out the next day, or I'll go get another one, or pay me extra or whatever. So,
All right, so you don't actually do the motherboard replacements then?
No, like if it's like a residential, I'll do it, but like for business clients,
okay,
no, it's
gotcha.
Because it's business critical infrastructure, so
Okay, very cool. Yeah. So, how did we get off on this tangent, anyways?
Because you wanted to talk motherboards.
Yep.
I love motherboards.
Best practice, and then you throw up in your mouth.
Yep. Sure. No, that's all good. So yeah, so I guess the whole point is as far as whether you mark something up or don't mark something up, and you want to sell it at wholesale to your customer, but you charge them a proper hourly rate, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Do you guys feel the need to have to charge for every little thing that you would provide the customer for, as far as hardware-wise? Does anybody feel like a need where they go, I have to add some money to this, or I just don't feel right?
I will say this: a lot of times, depending on the volume of what you deal with, there's some sort of logistical cost that goes into it. So whether it's your research to know the part numbers and to know the pricing, to order the part, to get it in, there's logistics that you've got to build in somewhere. So one of the reasons that I will always mark up is because it takes time to do that. Now, whether it's 10 minutes of my time looking up a part, or 10 minutes of my assistant's time looking that up, I've got to pay her to do that for me.
Sure.
So I've got to make that money up somewhere. So I don't have a problem with doing that markup. And like I said, a lot of times you can cover that in the cost of the hardware if you're getting it at a decent margin through a good distributor. A lot of times you don't. I mean, printers right now, I'll be honest with you, most of the printers I sell, I may make $5 to $10 on a printer.
Okay.
I'm not out there looking, for the cheapest price. What I do is, if it's available through my distributors, I'll order it. If it's not, I won't order it. Or I'll talk to the customer about, we can get it here. Do you want me to order it, or do you want to order it? And I just charge you whatever my cost is plus the shipping, and I don't worry about that, because those are customers I do business with all the time. So I'm going to make my money up somewhere else down the road.
Right.
But in terms of, feeling the need to always charge, I think if you're truly trying to cover all the costs of your business, and we're not just talking about the time it takes to look up the part, order it.
No.
You're talking about all the other things you've got to cover. You mentioned, your mortgage, your living expenses, your rent, your phone, your education, your business insurance.
Taxes.
all that stuff. You've got to add that in as part of your overall pricing strategy. You can hear more about that at the Unconvention in July. No.
Yes, you can.
Um,
in real life.
So that was another reason I really pushed to go with distributors. Distributors, if you do enough volume, you're going to get enough margin that it's not a big deal. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I can make $500 to $1,000 on a server, easy. And I don't try to discount it or figure out. If you do your pricing right, and you're getting your legitimate stuff, and I do HP servers, so I just go to my quoting software from HP, I get the cost, I give it to my customer, they say yes, and I go to my different distributors. If I can find it cheaper, great. And but that's going to cover all my time of putting together the quote. Going to the different distributors, because a lot of times you're not going to always get all your parts from the same distributor.
Right.
So
Yeah,
if you
that's
got
the other thing.
3 different places, that's 3 different times. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, 15 minutes. All that time adds up. So whether you're adding it as a, there used to be a thing we would do called a build cost, where we'd put all the price parts together. So here's the cost of the machine. Well, then here's the cost for us to build it.
Right.
So we used to do that. I don't really do that much anymore. So. It's basically whatever the retail cost is, or the manufacturer standard, whatever rule you use. You just try to get the best markup that you can.
Well, I think a lot of times the other thing too is when we're talking about the type of part, like let's say servers. Maybe if you have different tier levels of servers, and maybe if you want to make X amount of money off that server, but you could actually move them up into the second tier for not that much more money if you weren't willing to make as much profit on it. But if it makes your life easier to service that particular server because you know it inside and out, isn't that more beneficial than actually having to make all kinds of money off of that particular device?
Well, for me, it is. For my customers, it is, because I'm using the same, at least, model series of a server. So
Right.
I know all the parts, I know all the stuff. If I've got an issue, I've probably seen it before. If we've got to replace it, it's a much quicker replacement time than if I'm trying to think of some of the last things that have happened. I mean, I have had times where I've had to go search for parts, and because a 7-year-old server, I'm sorry,
Good luck
HP's
with
really
that.
not gonna. Yeah, you're not gonna get that part direct from HP most of the time. So yeah,
Right.
but I do have my other vendors that I can get HP parts from. And it may take some time to do that, but I know the part I'm looking for. I know the vendor or distributor or place I'm getting it from. I know it's legit, so it's easier for me just to pay the premium and to have my customer pay the premium, because we know that we're able to get the quality part, take care of them, keep them up and running.
Well, I think the other thing too is a lot of times you walk into these businesses and you'll see that they have a server that they need for a specific thing that they're doing in their office, and it's way underpowered for what they need. And it wouldn't cost that much more to move them up, and then you find out what they actually paid for this thing, and if somebody just came in and just raked them over the coals and said, "Oh yeah, we're gonna sell you the server," and they made a ton of money on it and they walked away. And I look at that stuff and I go, our job, yes, is to make money, absolutely, but our job is also to give the customer the best advice that we can, so that they can make those decisions. And now, if they make we lay everything out, and they make a bad decision and say, "No, I don't want to spend that much." Okay, here's what we can knock it down to, or here's what we can cut out. But here's some of the things that you're opening yourself to. So, in order to go, we're going to make a percentage off of every little thing we sell. It just seems to me if I'm selling a $1,000 server or a $2,000 server or a $5,000 server, and I got to make 30% off every one of those. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because do I really need to make that 30% off of there? Because obviously the 30% off 1,000, 2,000, and 5,000 is way different. but the handling, the time invested is still the same. And so I see a lot of people doing that, and I don't know that that's necessarily necessary. That just say
Well,
double word
yeah, I think what you get into is you get companies that get into their metrics. That they run their business off of whatever metrics it is, and
There's another word I hate. Yeah.
I think for larger companies, bigger than us, they don't have another way to measure by.
Right.
Every job is measured by a percentage that they make on the job, much like contractors, when they're building houses or doing some sort of home repair. It's all based on a per project basis, and they encapsulate their profit just on that job, as opposed to what I do is, my job cost and markup might only be this for this job, but hey, I've got 2 other jobs where I'm going to make a whole lot more, so it evens out.
Right.
Some of us can afford to do that, some cannot. But I do, want to comment on the fact that what you mentioned earlier about somebody coming in and raking customers over the coals, because they can sell them a server at twice the cost of what it should have been. That's just another injustice that techs are doing to our industry by not doing the right thing.
Right. I agree. Well, because I think a lot of times everybody wants to put everything into a formula. And I think even when people that don't know any better, I granted, people that are bad are going to be bad. People that are good are going to be good, period. But I think a lot of times people are persuaded to do something a particular way, and they kind of lose sight of the benefits to the customer. And so when they do that, I think there's other people that are teaching in a way that are also causing people to do wrong things in business. And maybe some of them don't know any better. They heard some great seminar or webinar or whatever that said, hey, we need to do this, this, and this. And so they just do that. But a lot of them don't have any experience, so they don't really know. So they just go out there blindly doing it when they could have had somebody that explained to them that there are different ways. Because you're right, Marvin, there are different things. When you have a company that's a larger company and you have employees and you have you have a storefront or whatever that you're paying for, you have to do business a little bit differently. Yes, those margins are going to matter when you're selling hardware. But I think for a lot of people that are independent techs, work out of their homes, work out of a small office, whatever, I think that they can do it a little bit differently, and they don't have to paint all those margins in for every little thing they do. Now, there's some people that, oh, no, I got to. And that's my point. I hear a lot of people in the different groups saying, oh, you should be doing this. Well, no, not necessarily, because they might not be doing business the same way you are.
Right.
You're telling them to do it a certain way, even though their business is slightly different, but you want to pigeonhole it into what you do. And I think that's a lot of people lose sight.
Right, and that's a big thing, right? Because a lot of times where, we go to a lot of these seminars, we go to a lot of these workshops, and there's a lot of great programs that are out there. Hey, you can 3 times your sales by the end of the year, or you can make X amount after 12 months. But they are speaking toward a different type of technician. They are speaking to a different type of a more matured type of technician, where some that are starting out, that are in home, etc., they want to get there, but they want to run before they crawl. And it's one of those where you have to go. There is no shortcuts in this business. There just isn't. And I can speak for that. There isn't. You have to sometimes scale back. And if you've gotten yourself so much into everything and trying to be like the big boys around there, and I'm not talking about big box stores. I'm talking about the really big MSPs that are out here doing, and they're a little bit more established. They have an office. They have staff. They have to standardize for themselves. You have to standardize for yourself as well, but by your own means with what you got and what you have. And if you can't, because you don't know how to do it, or you're at a point where you can't standardize, then it's not time right now. You have to get to the point where you can kind of look at it. Like, perfect example, I didn't know. I couldn't put a business plan together because I didn't know how. I've always been a computer technician at the time when I first started. I was never a computer business owner. So when I first started becoming a computer business owner, I couldn't put a business plan together because I didn't know what I was going to charge. I didn't know what the market was calling for. I didn't know how to forecast myself for the next year because I hadn't been through that. Now that I've been in 3 years, or going on 4 years in a month, I've kind of been in the game long enough to be able to put something together, standardized for what I'm doing right now, not what I want to be in 5, 10 years. You know, all those will come into subside, but you have to figure out what you're doing now before you can go to that next level, or you're going to flop. End of story. And that goes into putting percentages on margins, being able to charge like the big boys, but you don't have the big boy toys, you don't have the big boy skills, you don't have what needs to be charged for that rate that you feel that you deserve, then you got to invest in yourself to be able to get there.
Well, and I think the other thing too is people are not necessarily going for those types of businesses. You could be a single technician and make a very, very good living.
Agreed.
There are many that I know personally that do actually make a very good living than most jobs out there, to be honest with you. And they're doing it by themselves.
Yep.
Now they have, obviously they've got things like Marvin's talked about, distributors and different things, vendors and stuff that can help them out with some of the background stuff that they need done on a timely basis. Maybe they use some contract work for this, that, or the other. But the reality is they're pretty much still doing it predominantly themselves. Right. And maybe they never want to move into the point where they have employees. That's not everybody's goal. If I have a shop that has 7 employees and I'm bringing in X amount of revenue and I'm making the same, I'm bringing home to my personal income, I'm making the same as the person who's working by themselves, because by the time all the bills and everything are paid, they're both making the same amount of money. Now, in my opinion, this all depends on the type of person you are, which type of headaches do you want to deal with? The employees or not having employees? There's headaches to both. There's pros and cons. But what's going to be best for you? A lot of people, hey, we want to build a business. We want to move from break fix. We want to go into I want to be a full MSP, which there are none. Yes, I said that. And so with that being said, it's like, okay, that's great, but is that really what you want? Do you really know what you want? There's
Right.
a lot of people that got to those levels. They hired the employees, and they're just sitting there pulling their hair out, going, man, I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
It sucks. So there's different ways to do business and still make a good amount of money for your household income. And I think there's a lot of people out there that are being misled and don't understand the differences between that.
I mean, you always have to start out somewhere. It's like what Paco said. You start off on the bottom and you work your way up. Like Best Buy and all those big box stores. Like Geek Squad, they started out as their own individual company, and then once they got acquired and whatever, they grew and their methods and whatever. I mean, most of the methods that they use stayed with them, but it's you have to start out. You just can't go from crawling to running. You have to do it step by step and build your business up from from buying stuff on eBay, Amazon, whatever. And then once you get acquainted and get staff and get more clients and you afford that, you can get like distributors, more third-party vendors that are become a verified reseller, like Dell, HP, whatever, and then you got to work your way up. So.
Very true.
So.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of different. Now, Marvin, as far as your distributors, talking about marking things up, and what distributors do you use right now?
My 2 main distributors are Tech Data and D&H.
Okay.
And I have used Newegg from time to time. I have a couple of other internet web distributors that I found that you don't just find them by regular search, but they're like third-party HP resellers.
Okay. Yeah, I've got a couple of those. Yeah.
Those types of deals. And then I actually still do a lot of direct stuff. Datos direct. Sonic Wall is now Dell, so I get that through my distributor. I do my antivirus is direct, so I do a lot of direct stuff too.
Now, as far as the type of laptop or OEM that you prefer of what you're giving your business customers? Which one are you sticking with?
OEM.
Yeah, like HP, Dell.
HP is my primary.
Okay. You get those through your distributors, or you get those directly through HP?
Through my distributor.
Okay. And
Yeah,
what's the difference between Tech Data, and D&H? I mean, what do you get something different for having both those distributors?
They do have a little different program types and maybe discount levels.
Okay.
Right.
But for the most part, the reason I got two was inventory. Not all distributors carry every single line item part.
Okay.
So, and they're not always in stock. So I may, find, my HP desktops, 3 months in a row at one, and all of a sudden I may need 5, but there's only 3 in stock. I got to go to the other distributor and get my stock that way. Sometimes there are better discounts depending on quantity. So that's the reason I ended up going with the two.
Also, distance is a big piece too, because I have D&H and I have ASI partners. So my primary is normally D&H, and we're a Lenovo house. So if I can get it from ASI partners, they're in Itasca. They're in a lot closer than the D&H facility in Bolingbrook. They can ship them, but I find that if I need them a lot sooner rather than later, I can go straight down to their shipping warehouse and pick it up.
Okay. You said you're a Lenovo house, so is that with or without Superfish?
That's with and without Superfish. So, but yeah, no, we that's for our actually that's for both, for residential and business. But for business infrastructure, we update. It's going to be Lenovo. If it's residential, we try to go toward Lenovo's for IdeaPads, etc. But if they have a preference, we do have some direct. Now, you had mentioned if there's a difference between going directly or for the distributor. Now, it does help to have a reselling partnership with the OEM themselves as well, because even though you may have it at a discount with the distributor, by having a partnership with the actual OEM, they can cut the price of with the distributor even lower.
Okay.
Well, actually, not even just that. Sometimes they won't even sell unless you're a partner.
That too.
Oh, okay. That's a good point.
You just can't, you just can't sign up and start buying everything. You've got to qualify for what you sell. For instance, the two HP. There's the HP consumer side and the HP enterprise.
Right.
So you may not be qualified to sell enterprise unless you are a part of their partner program. Same with Dell Solution Provider. A lot of them are like that. You've got to be a partner in order to purchase their stuff through the distributors.
Okay. Very good. Well, I think unless anybody's got any last-minute things to add, anybody? Anyone? Bueller? Some of you youngins won't get that joke, but anyways. Classic movie. All right, so let's tell you what. I appreciate everyone coming on and sharing their thoughts today. A lot of good discussion and a lot of good information out there. Stuff I've even learned and gotten a little more solid on. Jason, if people wanted to find out more about you, where could they find you on the interwebs?
Mostly IRC land. I'm usually on the Foolish Tech Show by the Foolish IT team. They're doing their own podcast Monday through Friday. FoolishIT.com/live. IRC chat. Usually I'm in there under Phoenix. You can hit me up on there. Sometimes I'm in the Podnutz IRC. I'm on Google Plus, under your thing, or Doors thing. So IRC, using my website networkwatcher.org. Just a project I'm working on, but I am building a business website soon, so I'll have that up and running in the next few weeks. So
awesome. Well, glad you could come out and share with us today.
Yeah.
And Mr. Paco Lebron, where can people find out more about what you're up to?
Oh, I'm in everything nowadays, but
we know that.
Well, what can you say? I got my start off here, but anyway, so there's a couple places. Importantly, you can find me over at the Computer Business Podcast. I co-host with Matthew Rodella. We cover a lot of computer business topics, depending on what it is, anywhere from law, accounting, investing in your tools, and we have a lot of great subject matter experts, meaning, and I just heard Jeff throw up in his mouth, specifically people who are in the industry, and we want to go straight to the horse's mouth. So we don't want to go opinionated. We want to make sure we provide you brass tacks, exactly what's going on and how to improve your business. You can also find me over at my website, Prodigy Techs. We're over in Chicago. You can always drop me a line over there as well.
Very cool. Appreciate it. And yeah, we're very opinionated over here, and we're definitely not experts. But you know, anyways, we still have good information.
Indeed.
And also, Marvin Bee, Mr. Man in the Van, where can people find out more about you?
Well, if you do want to find an expert, head over to maninthevan.net, and I have 2 expertise, and we'll leave it at that.
Appreciate you coming out as usual and bringing the goods. A lot of good information. All right, come join us live for the Computer Repair Podcast every Sunday at 4 p.m. Eastern over at podnutz.com/Computer Repair Podcast Live. Join in on the conversation by calling in live and hanging out in the chat room. We also have audio available over at podnutz.com, or subscribe using your favorite podcatcher. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel, Computer Repair Podcast. Send your questions and feedback. Yes, we live off your questions and feedback and get fodder for the show. Send that to podnutz@podnutz.com. Or you can leave us a real live voicemail at 1-888-697-0162. Or if you're here on Sundays, you can actually call in live, and we can actually take the call on the air and talk to you. I want to thank all of our Patreon supporters. Appreciate what you guys are doing out there. You guys can also support this show by going to patreon.com/Computer Repair Podcast. And I want to thank everyone for listening and subscribing to the show. We'll see you next time on Podnutz, the Computer Repair Podcast. All right, we still are live on the air, but I will stop the regular recordings. Good show, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yep. Good show.
Agreed.
Yep.
All right. So, Paco, what do you got going on for this week? Anything?
For this week, I have...
It was a rhetorical question. I really don't care.
Okay. Yeah, well, I got stuff. Lots of stuff.
You've got stuff going on.
Is my son always still to this day, loves to say, stuff and things.
Stuff and things.
How's
Things
it
and
going?
stuff.
What are you doing? Stuff and things.
Nice.
Okay. Okay. If you don't really want to tell me what you're up to, that's cool, but hey, whatever.
Right.
Oh, man. How about you, Mr. Marvin? You got going on anything? Anything
Nothing
important this week?
No, not really. I've got a couple of projects. I think I have a. Oh no, that's just a demo. Sorry, nothing.
Is that a fluke? Is that a fluke demo?
No, that's an AVG managed workplace. I'll be doing a fluke thing in a couple of weeks though.
Oh, cool. Where are you doing that at?
That's going to be in West Palm.
Okay. Very cool.
So.
Down in Florida, obviously.
Yes, West Palm Beach.
Yeah. How about you, Jason? What do you got going on?
Nothing much. Just syncing some TV shows over Sync Thing right now from my server in the Netherlands over to my home server. So nothing much, clients during the week, all that fun stuff, So.
Folks, you didn't hear that online. He's not doing anything illegal. Just letting you know he's.
Right.
Nothing illegal.
Has nothing to do with the Netherlands.
He's purchasing. No, he's purchasing from iTunes.
No, it's actually DVR'd. Actually, it's from it actually is downloading from iTunes. So.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Just backing it up. So.
I got a question, and maybe there's something I haven't thought of, so I'll go ahead and throw it out here since everybody's still paying attention, and then we'll end the show off here shortly. But I've got a customer that every time they're on my managed service, but every time they open up Outlook and try to go into an email or a Word document, and try to open that up. They both hang. So I said, okay, no problem, because I try to get to the specifics of what the problem is. Say, hey, no problem. Let me go in. I do a cleanup on the computer, check everything. I don't find anything. Hard drive's still fine. The only thing I haven't checked yet is memory, and I know I need to do that. I just haven't had time to get to that. So that's the next. I'll just use a memory diagnostic tool on the Windows OS. In worst case scenarios, I'll have to pick it up and do a full diagnostic. But so I said, hey, I did this cleanup and everything. Let me know how it's going. And they opened up iTunes, and iTunes was hanging, which I know from my experience on Windows, iTunes seems to hang all the time. So, do you guys, can you think of anything that would be causing the computer basically, when certain programs are opened or being opened, to freeze?
You said they're on the maintenance plan, right?
Yes.
Have you checked to see what the when they report it? You check the dashboard to see where their memory is at.
Yeah.
Yeah, everything's good. Everything's nominal. So I mean, it's not. They're not pegging. The problem is with memory. Here's the bad part. You might have, especially in laptops, you're gonna have 2 sticks of memory, right? One of those sticks might be perfectly fine. One of the other sticks might actually, half the chips might be fine, half the chips might be bad. Right. So the problem is it's not accessing being random access memory. That's why it's called RAM. It randomly accesses the different portions on the chip. So because of that, it's not necessarily going to peg the same portions of the RAM all the time. Now, obviously, when you clear the cache on the RAM and all that kind of stuff, that's fine. But it's going to be random. So here's one of those random weird problems. And so that's why I was trying to figure out, yes, could it be RAM? It could be. I'm not sure if there's anything else that.
Only thing I could think of is try and do a clean boot and see if there's any problems. If the clean boot goes through and nothing hangs, then it's there's a process somewhere that's hanging off.
Get a process, Lasso or process. I think it's Explorer, and just look up, CPU usage. And do that, or even load up D7.2 and take a look. So
yeah, I use Process Explorer actually through D7.2. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything because that's actually what I was doing last night. And like I said, everything. I believe it's a dual core processor, and it's barely pegging.
Is it AMD by chance?
I don't think so, but I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
Because if it's an AMD Athlon, I've experienced that issue.
Yeah.
Would you experience the issue? This hasn't been a constant issue. I mean, it's
right.
a few years old.
It's intermittent. It's hit or miss. It's just I can't explain it. I don't know what it is, but it's like the last couple AMD Athlon dual cores that I've gotten in. We've done the complete reinstalls. We've done changing out the memory. We upgraded the memory. Everything tested out fine, both OEM and Tech USB. It's I don't know. There's just something with that processor specifically. I don't know what it is. I upgrade them to a higher AMD processor than what they are, and everything's fine.
I don't think it's I want to say it's a Core i something, but I'm not 100% sure. So
yeah, if it's AMD, then that's probably. If it's not that,
okay.
Yeah.
And it's a Windows 8.1, so I mean, obviously.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, we could move to Windows 10. The problem is a lot of times it's a Dell with these proprietary systems is that they'll run into a problem where a particular piece of hardware on that particular machine doesn't work. And I already had problems because this was an original Windows 8 machine, and I made sure it got upgraded way back when to 8.1, and that took care of some of the problems. But there's still been some issues. It started off, too, with an update from last month where Internet Explorer, if you opened up more than one tab, it would freeze.
Have you tried repairing Explorer with...
Okay. I've done that. So that's what's got me. Now, what I did see was they did an update on Internet Explorer 11. There was a security update that they did last month on Patch Tuesday. So, I moved them over to Chrome, set everything up the way they had it before, not a big deal. But it's like, okay, why? is just particular. It seems like the Microsoft programs for some reason, other than iTunes.
Right.
So.
It's always Microsoft, trying to screw with you, and it's like, like Steve Gibson said, with the Windows update on the ASUS motherboards. Guys, did you hear about that? The ASUS issue where basically the MBR, it's just crazy, and Steve has come up with his Never 10 app and stuff like that. So
yeah,
it's just crazy because they're trying to kill off 7. That's what they're trying to do. But like the military, like I just read, I think last week, and we even covered this on the Foolish Tech show that the U.S. or United States Marines had issues upgrading to Windows 10, and they were getting machines out of the box that were not working and stuff like that. And knowing like DoD and stuff like that, they pay a lot of money for those OSs, and they expect it to work.
That's surprising to me because being from the military, my brother works for the Navy, but yeah, a lot of them, I can't imagine the reason for going to Windows 10 because up until recently, most of the government's still been on Windows XP.
Yeah, or even 7 because, it's like with the thing with using wireless mice. I mean, like the Logitech saying that, the Army doesn't like to use them because they think that they have spying software in them, but, it's a Chinese company, so, you wouldn't blame them. Because, you get all these state-sponsored hackers, like the, China's hacking group, North Korea's hacking group, that's... So.
Well, the one thing about the one thing about DoD though is a lot of their stuff they have an internal intranet, but they a lot of times will not allow everybody or everything in that facility to get out online because you don't need to.
Yeah.
There's no reason. So
yeah, or
that's the only reason. That's really, in my opinion, that's the only reason they're actually staying safe.
Yeah.
Because if they opened everything up to the internet, it wouldn't matter what you put on there. There's going to be something that could be exploited.
Well, it's like the cat card, or the common, or whatever the hell they call it. But basically all the Army people that I've known, it's that they have to use their, smart card to log in through their internet, and then they have to use a VPN to encrypt all the traffic to get access to certain military resources. Like, regardless,
Yeah, that's smart. That's just smart business.
Yeah.
Obviously, Marvin, you do a lot of VPNing because of your offices across the way.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Here's the problem. The problem is consumerism is pushing stuff so fast that they're neglecting all of the other areas of protectionism that they're trying to say that they're protecting. So companies can't even protect their own stuff anymore because they can't upgrade, or if they're forced to upgrade, they lose functionality. And I'm going to have to deal with I had an attorney ask me about insurance for cyber attacks because he's worried about, if he has to go to his hosted platform, what happens if there's an attack that he can't even take care of, because it's no longer on a server at their office.
Right.
So, and the VPNs, I'll be honest, I deal with two types of things. I have a MPLS from the Internet Service Provider, and then we put our VPN tunnel on top of their their MPLS.
What is the MPLS?
I don't know if I just it's
just
their
Google.
It's their private network.
Okay.
I forget what the exact title is because but it's basically
label switching, I think.
Yeah, something protocol switching. Yeah.
So basically, you're doing a private network inside of a private network.
Technically, yes.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Yeah, it's a pain. Well, you know my rule of thumb. If you're on the there's two types of people. Those that have been hacked and those that haven't been hacked yet.
Right.
Those are the only two types.
Yeah.
So if you're on the internet, could happen.
Yeah. It's like, every government agency, like OPM that didn't use encryption, that was kind of bullcrap, and then Sony and, all these data breaches happening, like, the Staminus and the hacking team, and, they're all getting hacked through SQL. or social engineering.
Right.
Like
Most of the time, yeah, I was going to say, unfortunately, and this is not covered a whole lot. Most of the time, it is actually through social engineering. There are really not that many hackers in the world. The ones that actually know actual code and actually know how to do it, they're very few and far between. But we like to paint it, because we love movies like Hackers and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
we like to paint it like they're a little more readily available. They're not.
Yeah, of course.
So yeah, it's stupid social engineering that people will give up whatever they have.
It's like the FBI and the CIA directors. I was like the same kid that hacked both of them, and posed as I think he posed as a Verizon person, and then I think it was like this FBI director, and then it was CIA, and then it was like the DEA, and it's like it just kept happening and happening.
Gotcha.
It's just crazy. But I mean, he got caught, and then with all the scandals going on with the Bitcoin creator, and it's getting out of control. But,
absolutely. All right, I think with that, it's already past 5:30. I think we're going to end the official show off, and we appreciate everybody coming out on Sunday night, and we'll see you next Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Have a great week.